All right, this is Sports for Real. Just going to do a little my take on the NFL the way I see it. I had a chance to be down to the Bengals Jaguars game on Monday night, and it's the first time that Monday Night Football has been in Jacksonville for I think it's about 12 years. Turned out to be a pretty good game, better than most people expected. I kind of had a feeling that Cincinnati was going to show up and knock Jacksonville off. That's normally the way it happens because Cincinnati, without their quarterback, you expect them like any other team to struggle. But Jake Browning, he played a great game. I think he only missed like 3 passes all night. I don't even think he threw an interception. So this is the kind of performance that you had to have on the road on Monday Night Football when everybody's watching. And if it doesn't work out for him in Cincinnati, looks like he's going to have a place somewhere else. Now, I kind of forgot about old Browning. He was the quarterback that led the Washington Huskies to the last Pac-12 appearance in the college football playoffs. They came to Atlanta to take on Alabama. They lost, but he didn't disappoint from the way he played that particular day. But I want to start off talking about Joe Mixon. We were at the game, and I just happened to be sitting next to the visitors' tunnel. And you know, if you ever been to an NFL game, you know that fans tend to get there early and they start putting things over the rail for players to sign, trying to get players to give autograph on something. Well, I heard one kid shout out say, "There's Joe Mixon." I looked around, and sure enough, that was Joe Mixon. Okay, that's Joe Mixon. Okay, now what? Well, he did something a little bit different. You know, most people they'll sign autographs and they ignore their fans altogether. But this guy, he came out and he picked up a football, and instead of tossing around with his players, his teammates, he started throwing them into the crowd. Now, I thought he was just messing around, but no, he kept on firing them. They threw the ball back to him. He kept on firing them. He threw it to random people sitting in that level there by the stands. So after about 15, 20 minutes, he puts the ball down and he comes to start signing autographs. Think he's done? No, he's not done. That was just the warm up. So for about 20, 25 more minutes, he takes the ball and he starts firing the ball all over the little section where I was in. And even at the top level, where if you've been to Jacksonville Stadium, the 100 level, there's a deck there or a ramp where people walk around to get up to the second level. He was firing them all the way up to the top. Now, for him to make accurate passes from the field up to that level, he had to have been doing this for a while. So this is not something that is new. I just didn't know about it. But I will say this. It was unique and it was also a great thing because you could see on those kids' faces when they were catching the ball from Mixon and then throwing it back to him, playing catch with him. And even the grown-up kids, their eyes and their faces were lighting up because that was a great opportunity. Most of those guys, when they get to the pros, they don't participate and they don't want to have nothing to do with the fans because they get to a position where their head is much bigger than them, but not Mixon. And I thought that was great. So I'm giving a shout out to Joe Mixon for putting a smile on the fans' faces other than, just, signing autographs and, not paying them much mind. So that was a great thing as far as I'm concerned. And if it was me as a kid, that would be something I would remember forever. And just looking at the kids' faces as they was catching those passes, that'd be something they're going to remember forever. So again, shout out to Joe Mixon for doing that. Speaking of fans, I just happened to be sitting next to a Jaguar season ticket holder, and he wasn't talking to me, but I was close enough to hear everything he was saying. He says that Fred Taylor is going to make it to the Hall of Fame this year. He said he's deserving to be in the Hall of Fame. So while he was talking, I'm shaking my head. I hadn't grasped that possibility. Not saying that Fred Taylor can't make the Hall of Fame. Probably will. But at this time, he just doesn't strike me as that Hall of Fame type player. So he saw me shaking my head. So he said, well, if not Fred Taylor, then who? I didn't answer, because we're not talking about anybody else. We're not comparing them. I'm not comparing them to anybody else. He's trying to get me to call out names. I wouldn't do it because it wasn't necessary as far as I was concerned. We're talking about Fred Taylor. So I asked him, well, compared to who? I guess he thought it was a fair question, so finally he come out and started to say some of the players in the Hall of Fame, not that they shouldn't be there, but he says that Taylor is in the top 15 all-time rushing. He said he had 15,000 yards. I knew better than that, but I didn't have the exact number, so I didn't call him out on it. So he goes to look it up, and then he tells me, no, he's actually 15th. No, in actuality, he's 17th. And he's talked about John Riggins being in the Hall of Fame, and he talked about O.J. Simpson. I thought about that, and immediately it came to mind that this guy's just like everybody else. All the players that play today, or the ones that are recently fresh in your mind, you automatically consider them as the best players that ever played the game. Well, yards wise, you might think that, but if you don't know anything about the league, O.J. Simpson, for instance, I think he only played 14 games in a season. Jim Brown, they played 10 to 12 games a season. So when you look at Jim Brown's 12,000 yards compared to Fred Taylor's 11,000 yards, Fred Taylor, just for the fact that he played 4 additional games a season over 5 years, that's over a year's work more than what Jim Brown would have played. So if Jim Brown had played a 16-game schedule at his peak, how many yards would he have? So you're comparing apples to bowling balls. Plus, it's a different style of play. Jim Brown, O.J. Simpson, they played football. They're not playing football today. Now, in Taylor's credit, they're playing football more so than they play now. Now you breathe on a guy or look like you hit him too hard, they want to call a penalty. Is it a penalty, or are you just trying to clean the game up for the fans so you can see more scoring? But Taylor, he is a great player, and I think eventually he will get into the Hall of Fame. But the way these Halls of Fames work, not baseball, because baseball, they're voted in by baseball writers, and those guys tend to take grudges out on players that they don't like. And even though they're a legitimate Hall of Fame player candidate, they won't vote for him because that guy said something to him the wrong way 20 years ago, and they're going to hold that against him. So forget about the Baseball Hall of Fame, but normally with the Football Hall of Fame or the Basketball Hall of Fame, they don't take too long getting guys in the Hall of Fame that actually deserve. You have to be out of the league for 5 years before you can go get out of the NFL. I'm not quite sure how long it's been for Taylor, but I know it's been at least 15 years since he's been out. 10, 15, I know 12, 13 years since he's been out. I know he came in the league like 98. Yeah, 98, he was a rookie. I think he might have played like 10 years, so that put about '08. So about 14, 15 years he's been out of the league now. So when you take his 11,000 yards, that is a great accomplishment. I don't care what era you play in. But when you start talking about the greatest of all time because your peers say that, well, if all your peers have to go on what they see today, you have nothing to compare it to. Now, in his defense again, there's some players in the NFL that I don't think should be in the NFL, in the Hall of Fame, but they got in. They got in on the historical panel, and whether they deserve it, in my opinion, or not, they did play much more rugged football than what they play today. So, as far as I'm concerned, Fred Taylor, yes, he's a great player. He may get in the Hall of Fame, but when the guy was saying it the way he was saying it and talking about he's in the top 15, I didn't think that was true, and I verified that. Fred Taylor is 17th all time with 11,865 yards. So we'll see how that unfolds. Now, also at the game on Monday, it was a great game, like I said. It ended up going into overtime. Cincinnati kicked the field goal to send it into overtime. Jacksonville, they got the ball, and the guy, Beathard, he ran out and threw a pass deep. I think it was Ridley hit on like the 5-yard line. But wait, there was a holding call. So that kind of knocked Jacksonville out of field goal position, and they ended up having to punt. Cincinnati drove it right down and kicked the game-winning field goal, won the game. Shortly after the game, you got a crush of people in the same tunnel area where, right over on top of where the visitor team is. It seemed to be a slow departure there. Normally it doesn't take very long to get out of the game. But, you know, in a tight game, everybody tends to leave at the same time, like what occurred this time. And what happened was it took a little bit longer because I found out later that there was a fight right there at the entrance. NFL fans, when you have an opposing jerseys, the home team tends to give you a hard time about it, and it just tends to build. And when you have a tight game like what you had on Monday night, and you have a fan base like Cincinnati, who just turned out to be this time worse than what the 49ers fan has been in the past, they end up getting into a fight. I don't know how long it lasted, but it only lasted enough to back up the crowd from exiting from that particular section. But I don't see the purpose why fans should be fighting. I can understand you care about your team and you want your team to win and you spent a lot of money, but unless you lost some money in a bet, you have no reason to be getting upset. Because whether these guys win or lose, they're on the field shaking hands with each other. They're all friends. A lot of them know each other. Most of them know each other in some kind of fashion. So I'm going to try to win. I'm going to knock your head off between the whistles, but at the end of the day, I know I'm getting paid. On Tuesdays, NFL players get paid. And that's what it's all about, taking care of your family. They're not worried about what's going on in the stands. If you're stupid enough to get into a fight over whether or not some guy's got an opposing jersey on in your city, then you ought to get whatever happened to you. And this is the first time I heard of an incident where people actually got into a fight in Jacksonville. But I have heard a lot of fans catcall people with different jerseys on, and the situation could easily get out of hand. Now, other places like Oakland and San Francisco, that kind of thing is very common. Philadelphia, New York, yeah, it's more common there. But Jacksonville, this is the first time I ever heard of something like that occurring. But like I say, it's a dumb thing to do. So if you're silly enough to get into a fight and risk your health and happiness over whether or not some guy's got an opposing jersey or your team lost, you better get a grip, because the players on the other team, they could care less about some fan fighting in the stands. Yes, they want to win, but at the end of the day, they're going to shake hands, get and move on and get ready for the game the next week. So anyway, that's just my take on the situation. Again, I want to shout out to Joe Mixon for mixing with the fans the way he did. I consider that an honorable thing. And Fred Taylor, yes, he's probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame one day, but it just doesn't strike me as that all-time NFL Hall of Fame running back at this point. Maybe I'll change later, but today I just don't feel that way. And the NFL fans, you need to get a grip. So this has been Sports for Real. I'm Coach Hall. Later.